And next up we have How to Stay Cool with Auston Gonzalez.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Austin, a client advisor at the luxury fashion brand Burberry that has been grappling with an internal tension caused by working in this industry. For those of you who don't know, client advisor is a pretty term for sales associate. If you walk into my store located in Midtown East on Billionaires Row, you'll be greeted and assisted by either me or someone in the same position. I'm the one to guide you through the floors with expert advice regarding your style and product needs. As someone who hosts VIP appointments and sends clients to runway shows, there's a serious theatrical element to how I operate in the face of luxury. How I present myself in vastly different ways when under the bright lights of a sales floor is reminiscent of a show's acts. Whether it's following uniform and grooming guidelines, filtering my conversations in the way I talk, showing products in a certain way, or running through the store preparing champagne in the private appointment rooms, I sacrifice some of my personal interests and identity to fit this character. My props are carefully arranged with attention to spacing. This is to avoid overwhelming a client with a lot of products that might clash, and saving the most expensive product for reveal from the back to evoke a sense of rarity and desire. We even have branded ice cubes saved for special occasions. These are classic acts in a luxury scene. A tight direction that comes from a set of standards designed to embody the specific lifestyle and language of a brand. It was sociologist Irving Goffman who posed the idea that our social lives are essentially a series of performances influenced by the different social contexts in which they take place. In his book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, he makes an important distinction between front stage and backstage behaviors that we engage in. The front stage refers to how we perform in front of an audience, and the backstage refers to what we do without an audience. This was something I was never actively aware of in my profession. But after reading this in our cultural theory course in the first semester, I began to question everything. At the time, I was researching sustainability in luxury fashion and came across a pretty clear obstacle. There's no universal definition for luxury. It quickly became apparent that luxury is an evolving thing. In a 2021 Forbes business article, the writer states, in the past, the word luxury meant the highest quality products, the highest status, and great in-store experiences. That definition is still true, and there are many consumers for whom that will always be the only definition of luxury. But consumers are changing, retail is changing, and the very definition of what luxury means is changing for a lot of consumers, especially younger ones. Now, there are other values that mean luxury to consumers but don't fit the traditional definition of the word. As someone who hears that isn't luxury, or how can we make that more luxury on a daily basis, it's clear that the set of behaviors I adhere to are largely consistent across luxury stores and brands and make up our traditional cultural understanding of the concept. To upend these behaviors would articulate this shift and create a more accurate definition for today. Cases where a store is still luxury, but isn't just a cleanly edited environment to cater to the elite. I had one store in mind as a case study because it sells some familiar brands and practices some of these behaviors, but overall doesn't behave like any typical luxury store we know. Located on Lexington Avenue and East 30th Street in, quote, a district chocolate block of nail parlors and Indian restaurants, the building itself is uninviting, imposing neoclassical architecture from the early 1900s. It has a wealthy appearance, but private wealth, like it requires a membership to enter. A colonnaded limestone facade displays the store name and address in fine print. A lack of indication for what its founder, Rei Kawakubo, calls the beautiful chaos within. The brushed gold metal letters read like they're on a plaque. Dover Street Market, New York. This 20,000 square foot space was previously home to the New York School of Applied Design for Women, and is clearly one that was not originally intended for retail. DSM has 7 floors and a basement that all have individually created environments from artists and designers to showcase their various brands and products. It's difficult to see from the photo I took here, but the floors are organized by designer, not by having the most expensive products on the top floor, for example, which is a classic move in luxury retail, and rather a general collection of ideas that doesn't follow a clear theme. I took a more detailed approach to giving a full rundown of the space in a podcast that I produced about the complete in-store experience, but to bring you inside, it's important that we start in the single glass elevator that pierces all 7 floors in the center of the space. It was the only non-negotiable for Kawakubo when renovating the building prior to opening, and literally displays visitors like a product for others to see and perform alongside each other. I should also mention the space is constantly changing. Floor setups and collections are completely refreshed twice a year, with some installations changing weekly. These are 2 of its installations on the 5th floor, adjacent to each other but clashing in terms of atmosphere and emotion. Color versus concrete, adult versus child, the list goes on. Rei Kawakubo, pictured on the left, is the famed Japanese fashion designer known for creating the collective brand Comme des Garçons decades prior. And along with her life and business partner Adrienne Jaffe, they opened the original DSM in London in 2004. It took inspiration from a store called Kensington Market, which was an eclectic and bohemian type of store from the late 20th century in London that rented out stalls to people selling products. It was described as a cultural hub that mixed a variety of backgrounds and interests, welcoming punks and emerging designers along with anyone curious. DSM's New York space opened in 2013, at the time being the 4th location and now one of 8 locations worldwide. You don't need the full rundown of the designers' backgrounds and the history of the brands to tell this isn't the average Neiman Marcus you walk into with a clear way of navigating it. It's a bit uncomfortable and even challenging at some points. Rather than mimic a specific lifestyle from Comme des Garçons, which is the umbrella brand for the store's concept, it's like a collage of vastly different designs and desires. In a conversation with author and architecture expert Carrie Jacobs, she explained, with Kawakubo it's less predictable. It's about the collective energy of contradictory approaches and visual languages, not some seamless immersion in one tightly edited version of good taste. Kawakubo has notably been praised as a deconstructionist designer. It was specifically design writer Dayon Sujic who stated that Kawakubo deconstructs the language of clothing, reducing it to its constituent elements, fabric, cut, and detail. She's interested in the way the clothes work rather than their supposed meaning. I took this as a cue to deconstruct Overstreet Market, reducing it to its architecture, selection, and performance as expressive subchapters for the writing. This in theory would reflect how DSM, and hence luxury fashion, might work, rather than any supposed meanings. I had conversations with retail expert Iberi Anokute, who noted how today's popular retail elements like store-within-store concepts seen at department stores in the United States were likely cued by DSM's interpretation of the concept. St. Luke, a project manager for this staircase, called the biotopological scale-juggling escalator, one of the only permanent installations originally commissioned by the owners, stated how DSM and Rei Kawakubo take a playful yet serious approach to the overall design, operating between the 2. Recalling the fact that Kawakubo herself was the theme of the 2017 Met Gala, the published book about the actual exhibit titled Rei Kawakubo Comme des Garçons, Art of the In-Between, became an important source. It explains how her fashion designs have deconstructed the logic of cultural binaries by having them communicate and in many cases clash. A good example is the idea high versus low, which is intended to explore the space between elite and popular culture. To reflect on this, one of her collections on display combined tutus and leather jackets, which she describes as Harley-Davidson loves Margot Fontaine. The idea of the in-between is not only the essence of her work, including DSM, but also the current direction that consumer interests are pointed toward. At DSM, you can find $14,000 Italian-made dresses from Gucci, a setup not very different from the photo of Burberry's careful displays from earlier. Steps from $40 screen-printed t-shirts with heavy branding from New York skate brand Supreme. There's that dialogue between high and low, between binaries. The overt architectural gestures, like the piercing glass elevator and the yarn-bombed columns that are importantly non-load-bearing, staff performances that are aloof and without a uniform, and an exclusive yet widely varying selection of clothing are just several ways that DSM upends typical luxury standards. It blurs the line between a multitude of dichotomies. You aren't always sure whether something is designed simply to push you to buy a product, which is the classic purpose in a traditional retailer, or completely random and not related to the product at all. But the idea of luxury is never called into question here. It's rather blown up for reinterpretation. Goffman's idea of the front stage versus backstage behaviors that we engage in is the central dichotomy for this research, that we can further break down into the playful versus serious, high versus low, and business versus creativity. The list of binaries continues. The in-betweenness explored in all of these is how DSM works, and overall what makes it a go-to for shoppers and visitors of all interests. In essence, what makes it cool. And it starts with Rei Kawakubo's philosophy. I can't say I've resolved the tension of putting on an act to close a sale, but I'm rather much more aware. This is not to say the traditional understanding of luxury doesn't work or shouldn't apply to today. But this new way of looking at it through DSM is also now relevant for a lot of consumers. It's not necessarily the store I care so strongly about, but rather the way it works that I appreciate from the outside, because it's successful but doesn't always play into the idea of class distinction and a sort of utopian experience given to whoever can afford it. That itself shows a current shift in the industry. As Rei Kawakubo puts it, finding the right balance between creative and commercial has always been my work. The two are not necessarily opposed. Don't take anything too seriously, but not jokingly either. Be unique, but be part of a larger cause. Be creative, but also mean business. Always explore the in-between. That's how you stay cool. Thank you.
Give it up one more time. Auston Gonzalez, congratulations. Here, give me a hug. Why not? Am I standing in the right place? Okay, great. I was given a mark, but I just get a little lost. Too excited. Auston, okay, question that's on everyone's lips. Can we get a discount at Burberry?
Text me after this, Eric.
Okay, I will. And who are you wearing?
I'm wearing Uniqlo, head to toe, and then the shoes are from Dover Street Market.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, you want to keep it casual. It's about high-low, like you were talking about it. And you were the kind of resident Gen Zer of the year. I mean, at least that's what kind of kept getting said. I don't know. I didn't do the math on everyone else and whether they are Gen Z or not. But what does that mean to you, being Gen Z, or the representative Gen Z, or how do you rep Gen Z?
That's a great question, Eric. I don't know. I've for some reason I felt like I was just a part of one big group, and I didn't feel like a Gen Z at times, which was actually very relieving. A lot of times in my profession, I'm like the younger person who's not as experienced or doesn't have as much knowledge about certain things. So it was just really nice for everybody to be a part of kind of one big collective group.
Yes, break down those generational barriers. It is not a war. Though boomers do need to let go of their money, okay? We need to buy homes, us millennials. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm getting off track here. Auston, that was really incredible. Thank you so much. You've done so much great work, and this really came together beautifully. So thanks a lot. Give it up one more time for Auston.